Good morning everyone, here with my ICT digital story. The first slide shows the overview of the lesson series I gave, starting with the pre-test in my mental class. There's three 4 composite classes at Spotswood where I was placed, and my mental class took on the lowest achieving fluid group. I gave an overview to the entire fluid group before then moving on to lessons to a subset of 4+1 for arrays, short division and long division. 4+1 because the +1 is a child with learning difficulties and he was sometimes able to make it and sometimes not. It's a fair problematic, certainly challenging when he was present, but a good learning experience nevertheless. Lesson 6, I then did some revision with my subset students. Lesson 7, I did revision for the whole fluid group, and then we finished with the post-test. The pre-test itself was based on pages from Nelson, which some of you are probably familiar with, on the basis that Booker was considered too hard. The questions in the view of many students was really just a bit hard to understand. They weren't really clear necessarily what they were trying to do, which was a bit of a worry, and I think the whole idea of using Nelson needs to be revisited, shall I say. Out of 64 possible marks, the group I was responsible for scored between no idea and struggling, as I call it. So they got either 3 or up to 31, which wasn't too impressive, so clearly some challenges ahead. I started with an introductory session to the entire fluid group, and I used math antics. I'd recommend anybody interested in primary school maths look at this website. It's fantastic. Very engaging for the children, as you can see from the couple of photos there, and very accessible even to those most challenged. By way of a check, I did a little bit of assessment for learning by running through a couple of examples on the whiteboard post seeing the video. I was very happy based on the interactions that the kids various were well on board. So turning then to my particular subset of 4+1, and in the bottom left you can see that on the first session all 5 students were there, and they were very engaged initially with this arrays lesson. I used one from Scootle and one from ABC Splash. Whilst initially engaging, there was the problem that they were very slow and so became boring quite quickly. And secondly, with the Scootle one in particular, once you found the answer for a particular fact family, the sessions were structured so that every question had the same answer, and kids quickly got on the fact that you could struggle through the first one and just repeat the answer after that. So the learning power of these resources was not quite as good as it could have been, but certainly some potential there, some of the resources, and then maybe some better resources, some of that I just was not able to find. Continuing on, I've got a little digression here because, as I mentioned in the previous slide, there were some learning environment challenges, and this is because I was in a bit of an ante-room between 2 classrooms, so somewhat noisy. That ante-room was used to charge classroom laptops and as a classroom library, so it tended to be very busy. I had to put a stop to kids wandering in and out for these resources. Lots of wires everywhere, very cramped, so you can see from the picture on the left in particular, there wasn't really a lot of room to move around and give task-related support to the students. It wasn't a significant opportunity to do something else at the time, but certainly a lesson for the future that preparing the learning environment is an important component of what we do. Back to the lessons, the resources I used for short division were, without exception, excellent. They really were very engaging. I think they're actually quite educational in the sense of actually teaching, as opposed to just giving practice to the kids. The jigsaw resource top left really goes on the basis that I'll answer the question bottom left by dragging the jigsaw piece bottom right to the relevant spot on the jigsaw. You can see I've done this with a number of pieces, and there's a dinosaur beginning to emerge. Clearly 72 divided by 9 is 8, so I should move that piece of jigsaw to the 8. The one in the middle, the slide division from Scootle, is a great resource too. A little bit more involved, takes a little while to get the hang of, but once kids did, they enjoyed the idea of moving the vertical line between the orange and the grey square to a point where they thought that the fact family they presented with was manageable and they understood, they then locked that in before dividing past the remaining grey area to find another comfortable set of numbers, and so on until they completely covered the rectangle with orange as opposed to grey, albeit in separate rectangles. You add together the results of your sums, and you got the answer. So terrific resource, and you can set it at different levels. The clear winner on the day, however, was demolition division. Lots of wham bam, so not really surprising, but it was really a great resource for getting to think quickly and really pushing on ahead with the incentive of blowing away the tanks based on having the right answer to the division sum on their on the top of the vehicle shown in the picture there, top right. Just a huge win of that one, and interestingly, it could be set at a lot of different levels, so you could vary the significance, the degree of difficulty with the actual sum itself and with the speed of the approaching tanks and so on. So really very versatile and highly popular resource. Another excellent resource from Mr. Nussbaum, the divide pile, goes in exhaustive detail through the algorithm for long division. You can show all the steps there, so I won't go through them, but it really is very good. Again, per the picture top left, you have an opportunity to set the levels and differentiate across the different laptops for the different kids and their different levels. The one shortcoming, in my view, is that it's so pedantic with the step-by-step progression that it can get a bit finicky. That said, it does work a treat, and you really do learn as you go with this long division stuff. At this stage, the lack of times tables knowledge was becoming particularly apparent. We then moved to revision. I customized an Excel spreadsheet, and this was good from the point of view of being able to get together a lot of different types of problems. I found that online resources tend to be focused on one thing or another, so either arrays or short division or long division or whatever else. To get something that did all of these was really quite difficult, so it was great to have the opportunity to actually use Excel instead. To give you a better idea, I've got it online, and you can see how I've turned some of the cells green by virtue of getting the right answer in there, and hence using the augmentation stage of the SAMR model. Just to give you an example in person, as it were, you can see going through this, work out the following 2 divided by 48. Sorry, 48 divided by 2, what am I saying? And as I go through it, you can see that delightfully, as far as the kids were concerned, the cells were turning green. So I'm now dividing 2's into 8. And again, magical stuff, all turns green. And there we have it. So we know that 48 goes into 2 24 times. And this was what I used throughout the whole spreadsheet. A big success. And I used that first in my subgroup where they had individual laptops. Needed a bit of guidance because of a lack of familiarity for Excel, but it wasn't too bad. And then I gave handouts to the students in the fluid group overall, while I managed the main screen and they could work along with me. Here I've got the pre and post test series set out for students A, S, W and I. I've got a page so that the whole full page is covered, the Nelson test, and you can see there's improvements. And when I say you see, it's actually probably quite hard. So what I did is I actually did a table, and you can see there's very significant improvements in the summative assessment context. The one disappointing one was student S, who was clearly distracted on the day. I think his issue was a school cabinet fault, and he'd been actually fantastic in lessons. I was expecting him to absolutely rip through this test. He'd been asking for extra work. I'd had feedback on a couple of separate occasions from his mother that it was going well, but for whatever reason it didn't work out that way. When I say the distraction of the camp may have been it. In terms of conclusions, etc., I think, as mentioned, learning environment and warm-up games need to be orderly and well organised if it's not to detract from the lesson. Students clearly struggle with computer use, and there's a need for actual basic training. Hard to find dynamic ICT resources, a lot of resources around, but most of them are practice rather than anything else. And it's interesting that kids are really only familiar with things like Mathletics, Cool Maths, Study Ladder, etc. They don't know some of these other ones like the ones I've showcased. Whiteboards, I think, are undervalued because you get that human interaction which informs progress. There's lots of substitution, little augmentation in my experience, and bugger all MRR. In conclusion, I think ICT is good as far as it goes, but we really need to better leverage the SAMR model. And for me, the future directions that I need to go in, and perhaps the whole education community, is that we need to be very clear on preparing the educational setting. We need to make sure there's training on ICT, not just more ICT, and we need to better move in terms of the SAMR model. Thank you.